I'm Terry.
Standing here in front of the closed Open Hands Café, memories flood back like a relentless tide. The snow is falling softly, and the world around me seems to hold its breath. I can't help but think about how close I came to losing everything. It all started on that fateful morning when I was on my way to work at the old cafe. As I turned the corner, I was met with a scene straight out of a nightmare. Red and blue lights flashed against the snow, covered buildings, police vehicles lined the street, and yellow tape stretched across the sidewalk. A fire truck was parked near the entrance, its lights spinning silently. I stopped in my tracks, my mind refusing to make sense of what I was seeing. An officer stopped me from getting closer. "I work here," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "What happened?" A detective stepped forward and asked if I was Terry. When I said yes, he told me there was an active explosive device planted under the front threshold. It would have detonated when the door was opened. I felt my knees weaken, and I reached out blindly to grip the edge of a nearby car. The detective then told me that it was disarmed at 5:58, just 2 minutes before 6 o'clock, the time I usually open the cafe. If I had been on time, I would have been standing directly over it. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Fear and relief washed over me in waves, leaving me shaking and gasping for air. I was late that morning because of a warning from an old man named Jack. He was a homeless man I had befriended over the past few months. One night, as I was leaving the cafe, he stopped me in the alley. His face was serious, and there was a tightness in his expression that I had never seen before. "Tomorrow morning, you can't be the one who opens the cafe," he said. I was confused and skeptical. Jack was just a homeless man with no address or proof, and he was asking me to risk my job. But there was something about the way he stood there, so steady and resolute, that made it hard to dismiss him. I thought about my boss, Mr. Harris. He was a man in his late 50s, broad-shouldered, and always looking for faults. If I was late, he would surely dock my pay or even fire me. My mother, who had a heart condition, was also dependent on my paycheck. I had to be careful. But Jack's warning kept echoing in my mind. He said he couldn't explain it right then but promised to tell me everything later. In the end, I decided to trust him.
Let me take you back a bit.
I grew up in a small, working-class family in Chicago. My father was a hard, working factory worker who passed away when I was a teenager. My mother was left to raise me on her own, and she did an amazing job. But after she had a heart attack a few years ago, she became very frail and needed my constant care. I started working at the cafe, Harris's Coffee Corner, to make ends meet. It was a small place on the ground floor of an old apartment building. I was responsible for opening the cafe every morning at 6 o'clock sharp. It was an unspoken rule, and I never missed a day, no matter the weather or how I was feeling. Mr. Harris was a difficult boss. He was always nitpicking, complaining about the tables not being clean enough, the coffee being too hot or too cold. And my paycheck was always late. I was constantly worried about paying the rent, the utilities, and my mother's medical bills. One day, while restocking supplies in the storage room, I tripped over a pallet. Behind it, I noticed large blue sacks tightly tied and stacked against the wall. They were different from the usual supplies, with no labels or markings. Curious, I pressed a hand against one, and I could feel something heavy and granular shifting inside. I quickly stepped back, telling myself it wasn't my business. But after that, Mr. Harris started watching me more closely. He would come in late at night when the cafe was closed, and there were always strange men entering through the back door. They never ordered food and didn't talk to the staff. When I mentioned it to the cook, she just shrugged and told me not to get involved. Then there was Jack. I first noticed him standing near the side alley behind the cafe. He was tall, with a hunched posture and a worn-out army coat. His beard was gray and uneven, and his gloves were mismatched. But his eyes were clear and watchful. I started bringing him food when no one was looking. It was just small things like leftover soup or bread. He never complained or asked for more. Our conversations were brief, just a simple greeting or a question about the weather. But there was a trust between us, a quiet understanding. One day, as I was handing him a container of oatmeal, I blurted out that my mom was sick. He just listened, not offering advice or saying he understood. But his simple acknowledgement made me feel a little better. On the night before that fateful morning, Jack's warning changed everything. I went home that night, my mind in turmoil. I thought about all the times I had been on time, how important it was to keep my job. But I also thought about Jack's face, the seriousness in his eyes. In the end, I decided to take a chance. I made coffee, drank it standing in the kitchen, and waited until after 6 o'clock. When I finally made my way to the cafe, I found the chaos that I described earlier. The police investigation quickly revealed that the cafe was a drop point for drug trafficking. The blue sacks I had seen were filled with narcotics. Mr. Harris was arrested for drug trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted murder. I was called to the police station to give my statement. I told them everything about my schedule, Mr. Harris's behavior, the strange men, and the blue sacks. I also told them about Jack and his warning. The detective said that without his warning, I would have been killed. I was eligible for victim compensation, which included medical expenses, lost wages, and counseling. This was a huge relief for me and my mother. It meant that I could finally afford to give her the care she needed. But Jack had disappeared. I searched everywhere for him, starting from the alley behind the cafe. I walked the surrounding blocks, asking people if they had seen an old man in an army coat. By the third day, I was starting to lose hope. On the fourth evening, I found him in a small city park. He looked thinner and more hunched than before. When I approached him, he told me that I shouldn't be looking for him. But I told him that he had saved my life, and I wasn't going to stop. He then told me his story. He had served as a combat engineer in the military. When he returned home, his life fell apart. His marriage ended, his son stopped talking to him, and he started drinking. One bad decision after another led him to the streets. When he saw the men at the cafe, he recognized the signs of a bomb being planted. He couldn't just walk away. He said he had walked away from difficult situations before, and it had cost him too much. I told him what the police had found, and that they were trying to find him. He was afraid of dealing with the authorities, but I convinced him to trust me. I went back to the police and told them everything he had shared with me. The police confirmed his service record and his military training. They offered him options like veteran rehabilitation, transitional housing, and counseling. Jack was hesitant at first, but with my support, he agreed to enter the Veterans Rehabilitation Program. After all of this, I decided to follow my dream of opening my own cafe. I found a small corner space for rent in a working-class neighborhood. I painted the walls, bought second-hand tables, and created a simple menu. I called it Open Hands Café. Jack helped me whenever he could. He fixed the wiring, reinforced the back door, and gave me security advice. A local produce supplier named Tom started bringing me fresh fruits and vegetables. We developed a good relationship based on mutual respect. The cafe slowly found its rhythm. I hired a part-time employee and regular customers started to come in. I placed a sign near the register that said, "Kindness changes more than we can see." It was a reminder of the power of kindness and how it had saved my life. And then there was my wedding. Tom and I decided to get married in the cafe after closing hours. It was a simple ceremony with our neighbors and regular customers as witnesses. Jack sat in the front row, wearing his restored veteran uniform. He gave a short speech about how kindness had saved both our lives. As I look back on all that has happened, I realize that kindness is what truly matters. It can break the cycle of evil and bring hope in the darkest of times. The Open Hands Cafe is not just a place to eat and drink. It's a place where kindness is practiced every day. And I know that as long as I keep the doors open, I'm making a difference, one small act of kindness at a time.